Здравейте! С нас е Чарлз Стюарт. Чарлз има над 15 години професионален опит, м, много от тях като учител, в последствие като обучител на учители. Той е от постоянният екип на Кембридж за Professional Learning and Development, така че той изнася семинари по цял свят, както говорихме, на Европа, Близък изток, Америките, така че наистина е човек с много опит. Радвам се, че име до днес успя да е тук. Той беше и лектор на последния ни Кембридж ден, беше тук на живо, което беше много добър шанс за хората, които присъстват да говорят с него, да работят с него. Така че м, наистина благодарим на Чарлз, че е с нас.
Thank you very much. And let me begin by thanking all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this webinar. I'm very honored to be here speaking to you today about the course book Superminds. So I know that in Bulgaria that this is the course book that you use in your classes. And so this session today, we're going to be looking at how we can expand young minds using superminds. So, with that being said, a little bit about what we will be doing today. First of all, we're going to look a little bit at what the scholars say regarding coursebook use. I know that this is not something that is normally covered in webinars, but it's very interesting for us to look at what research has said regarding coursebook use and specifically various considerations in using coursebooks in our lessons. And then once we establish that foundation, we're then going to look at superminds at a normal unit in superminds and to think about various things that we can do with the materials based on research, various activities that we can do, the ways that we can use the course book to really extend language practice in the classroom. And then at the end, I will leave you with a few resources that Cambridge University Press and Assessment offer for teachers. Some of them are books that you can buy, but there are also several free resources as well that I will leave you with. So let's go ahead and jump in and to look at how we can use course books more effectively in the classroom. So to begin with, a couple of reflection questions. I want you to think of a time when you were teaching when an activity that you had planned from a course book didn't exactly go as you planned it. And specifically, what did you change, or what would you change if you did this the next time? So the next time, give additional materials to help understanding. So you recognize that as it's written, just so in the textbook, maybe based on the needs of our students, maybe we could slightly adapt it through giving extra materials, okay? Imagine that a new teacher joined your school and they came up to you for advice and they asked the question, do I have to do everything in the book? What advice would you give them? They could add more, so supplement more, skipping some of the things. You could try, but it's not always necessary. So when we look at the textbook, what exactly is the role of the textbook in our classes? There's a dilemma here. On one hand, the textbook gives us structure. It gives us the sequence of activities that we can do. It gives us resources, but it's not the curriculum itself. Every class is different. And within classes, a lot of times when we as teachers think of the classes that we teach, we think of groups of students and we tend to group them together. However, it's very important for us to look past the group to see that a group is made up of a series of individuals. And it's these individuals, specific individuals that we need to be looking at and we need to be focused on because the teacher's role in the classroom is this dilemma to find a balance to it. Here's the course book. Here's what I need to teach. Here's the structure and the sequence of activities and the resources. But here's my students. How can I blend the two together? And this becomes our challenge as teachers in the classroom. There's an article in particular that I highly recommend. This article is from several years ago. It was in an English teaching manual called English Teaching Professional. And Darren Elliott wrote an article called The Coursebook Challenge. And in this, he says difficulties arise when we try to use textbooks exactly as they are without thinking about what word is this? When we're thinking about using a course book in the classroom and different activities that we can do, we are informed on what we do by our students, by their needs, by the circumstances that we find them in, by what we feel will help to maximize the learning that happens into the classroom. Sometimes it's easy, but with certain students, this can present us quite a tall challenge for us to consider in the classroom and in preparing our lessons. But in this article, he goes on to list some different principles that we can keep in mind of effective coursebook use. Now, I'm not going to give them to you. I'm going to make you work for them. So what I have here, 1 through 5, are the different principles. Let's see if we can match it to A through E of what the principle entails. So I'll give you about 30 seconds right now just simply to read through the slide. So how can we make this come into balance? Number one, start with your learners. A, B, C, D, or E. What does that mean? Adaptation begins with understanding who is in front of you. So the first principle in achieving this balance is to look at who sits in front of you and what their needs are, and a good understanding of what makes them tick and how they learn. Number two, focus on the learning goal. As we do activities with our students in our class, it's not enough just to pull a random activity out and do it. There needs to be a reason behind why we're doing it in the classroom, what this activity will really achieve and how it will help my learners practice the language that I'm needing them to learn. Once we start with our learners and identify our learning goals, then we can adjust the level of challenge. Good adaptation keeps tasks in the learner's zone of proximal development. What does that mean? Basically, it's not too easy, but it's not too challenging as well. If it's too easy, they get bored. If it's too challenging, we lose them. Therefore, keeping it in that achievability zone, whilst at the same time balancing skills and energy. B or D? It is absolutely B. So here, adapt the flow of the lesson to maintain engagement and to manage the energy of our students as well. Now, I will say this, especially with young learners in my classroom experience that I've had, this is something that I can think about and plan for, but a lot of time it's me thinking on my feet in the class itself, seeing that the energy level is tanking and thinking, right, I need them up out of the seats moving around. I need to practice this. Therefore, what can I do? But remember, in all of this, stay true to the spirit of the lessons. Superminds is a great book. Superminds, I love the way that it stages the sequence of lessons one from another. It's fun, it's creative, it inspires the curiosity of our learners. Therefore, stay true to the spirit of this in how we're using the course book as well. When we do this, our learners will be engaged. When we do this, engagement will drive learning. Both emotional and cognitive involvement strengthens memory and retention. When a learner is engaged emotionally, when they're thinking about what they're learning, this is what builds the memory and the retention that we want them to have with the target language that we're teaching in the classroom. Activities must be memorable on one hand, but meaningful on another. My advice to you here is avoid mechanical drills. Just doing it very mechanically, I would question, is there not a better way that would engage the learners a bit more? Therefore, one way that you can do this is by linking the language to their lives and what they're interested in as well. As we're doing activities and we're bringing this dilemma into balance through the principles that we've seen, promote the active use of language. Make sure that our classrooms are language-rich classrooms. What that means is in every aspect of the classroom itself, English is being trained, even down to small questions and conversations that our learners may have, slightly off topic of what we are teaching in the classroom. And lastly, of course, balance fun and learning as well. It helps motivate our learners. It helps keep them energized as well. But remember, fun activities don't replace learning, they enhance it. And as we're looking at the unit from this course book, we need to keep this in mind that behind every activity that we do, there needs to be a reason why we're doing it. Yes, our learners are having fun, but they're having fun whilst they're learning, because learning is the key aim of what we hope to achieve in the classroom and what we try to achieve in the classroom. So with that being said, let's look at superminds and let's look at a typical unit of superminds, and let's think about these principles that we've spoken about and that we've dealt with, and think about how we could take the material and make it fun and memorable, how we can take the material and help us to have that language-rich classroom. So, as you know, having used Superminds previously, it opens with a spread that looks much like this, where it focuses on key vocabulary and it presents it usually through an illustration. And this is what sets the scene for the entire unit itself. So, my question for you is, imagine that you open the book, these are the pages that you want to teach. How would you start your lesson? Let me hear from you in the chat. What are some different things that we could do with this spread from the course book? How would you start the unit? An idea that I will give you. So for me, usually when I would start a unit like this, where I have a set of vocabulary, I would in some way involve questions. Because remember, as we're trying to find this balance with the course book, we have what the course book gives us, the resources, the structure, but I need to remember my learners and how this intersects. So a good way to do this is through something that's called personalized questions. And in doing this, you basically ask questions about the different words. So for example, rabbit. What are some questions that you could ask your learners about rabbits? So one thing to keep in mind with us looking at this proximal zone of development. So here, not too difficult, but not too easy as well. We need to keep in mind, though, that with our learners, that we have a very wide range of abilities, very wide range of knowledge of what they can and can't do. So a good rule of thumb, a good rule of practice for asking questions about vocabulary like this is making sure for each vocabulary item that you're asking questions that all of our learners can answer, that most of our learners can answer, but also only some of our learners can answer that would then challenge the ones that are a bit more advanced. So when we think about a rabbit, what would be a good question that we could ask that most learners, if not all of them, 99% would be able to answer? The question that was already asked, what do rabbits eat? They eat carrots. Half, if not better, could do that. Or a question like, what can it do? Can a rabbit run? Can a rabbit walk? What is this called when an animal does this? Hop. Can a rabbit hop? Yes, it can. But then we would also need to follow up with a question that only a handful of students, the more advanced ones, could answer. Something perhaps like, have you ever seen a rabbit in the forest? Where it's a bit more complex question than just simply, do you like it? Or have you got a rabbit as a pet? Or what do rabbits eat? So as we're going through these, we're asking very targeted questions that all of our students can answer, that most of them can answer, and that some of them can answer as well. And in doing so, we're keeping in mind this proximal zone that we're trying to achieve. So we can go on from here. Spiders. What is a question that all of our students could answer? I would say, are there any poisonous spiders in Bulgaria? Something like this. Once again, we're keeping in mind all of the levels in our class and challenging all of our learners in a way that they can achieve it without it being too difficult nor too easy as well. Another idea that I will give you in this set deals with flashcards. I'm sure if I went around and if I could see everyone and I would ask the question, do you use flashcards in your classes? All of our hands would be up. We know that flashcards are a great resource for young learner classes, particularly with learning vocabulary. My question for you is, why? What makes flashcards so useful for young learner classes? So for this, what I would do, there's several different ways that you can do it. I like, I don't like. I can do, I can't do. So if it's something like actions, jump, walk, run, skip, I have got, I haven't got. Things like pencils or armchairs or something like this. And basically, what you're doing is, well, the way that I did it in my classes is I would have the cards in a bag and I would pull the card out and I would say, what is it? It's a frog. On one side of the classroom, I would have the plus. The other side, I would have the X. I would go, what is it? It's a frog. Three, two, one, go. Do you like it? And they would have to run to the side of the room. And then I would go around and ask them, do you like the frog? Yes, I do. Or I like frogs. And then on the other side, no, I don't like frogs. Here, you're encouraging them to really think about and categorize vocabulary. This is so useful in building things like critical thinking skills, because with critical thinking skills, lower level or lower order critical thinking skills involves the taking in of information and processing it to understand it. And through doing categorization games like this, we're allowing learners to take in the vocabulary and make sense of it in order to then process it at a much higher level. And through sorting activities, it's an excellent way to consolidate language as well. Someone wrote in the chat, true or false? Absolutely. Does a frog, I would say a frog hops, true or false? So excellent adaptation. There's many different ways that you can do it. Let me encourage you though, in your flashcard games, go beyond just simply, what is it? Let them categorize it in some way to make it more memorable and meaningful for them. Another good activity that I'll give you is one called Slap the Board. This is really good, particularly with middle-aged primary to upper-aged primary learners. And basically for this, what you do is you write the words on the board. Your learners are standing in two lines, but their back is to the board. They can't see what's written there. You ask them a question such as, I sleep in my And then what they have to do is you'll go three, two, one, go, and they turn around, they look at the words, and they have to hit the board or swat it with a fly swat or throw a beanbag at the board to try to identify the correct word for it. There's different adaptations that you can do for lower level learners with doing this game. Let them face the board. Perhaps show them the sentence, I sleep in my blank, but make it a race. Here, we're making learning fun whilst still practicing the language and where learning is happening. We're not doing something fun just for the sake of doing fun. We're doing it for a reason. And here it's to consolidate the language. Moving on in the unit, after the first spread, after the introductory pictures, we know, of course, that there's a song. Here, it practices, it extends the language. Usually here is where the first language point, so the grammar or the chunks of language is introduced through the song or through the chant before then focusing on it and going through and through a listening and consolidating the knowledge in order to practice it more. Usually, with about half of my learners, if I would do a listening exactly like it's written in the course book, they're not really interested, or I have problems with them doing it, or not understanding, or something like this. Let me encourage you, give them a purpose for listening. It makes the language memorable and it helps them to think about it and get that cognitive reflection on the language. So, what type of activity could we do for this song? What I would do is something like this. I would not show them the words. I would just simply show them this picture. And I would say, we're going to listen to a song about Tommy. Where's Tommy at? In the kitchen. Okay. What are five words that you think you will hear in the song? And let them write the 5 words down. Okay. What are 5 words that you do not think will be in the song? And let them write these down. Now, encourage them to have fun. The song is about the kitchen, and inevitably in every class, you're going to have some comedian say, lizards, ha 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 ha. Go with it. Encourage them to be creative. Encourage them to pull other language out that they've learned. It could be a random word from a video game that they play from Minecraft or something like this. Encourage them to use it. Encourage them to have fun with the language.
Numbers, numbers, maybe. One,
Or
two,
numbers.
yeah,
Yeah,
3, 4, 5, 1.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But encourage them to write down words that they don't hear. And then before we do the listening task in the book, we play the song and they have to then tick the words that they heard. And then at the end, go back to it. How many words did you get? Who got all 5 words? and then go through them. What are some of the words that did not happen in the song? And discuss those as well. This is how we have a language-rich classroom. And we make sure that that the English language is being practiced in every aspect of the class. Here we're having a conversation with our class and with our students and talking to them about it. But in doing so, it gives them a reason to do the listening. And this will help make it memorable and meaningful, but also give them purpose that they need to be motivated. With the grammar, with the language that is being practiced, have fun with it. So here, of course, allow your learners to practice the language. So we can see here they're drawing their own basket of food, and they have to say what's in it. Give them emotions. Happy, sad, surprised, bored, worried. And what they have to do is when they're describing their basket, they have to put this word, this feeling, this emotion in how they're saying it. So there are 10 cakes in my basket. I could say, there are 10 cakes in my basket. Or sad. There are 10 cakes in my basket. It makes learning memorable. It allows them to have fun with it, but we're also practicing it as well. We're practicing the language. We're getting them to here do basically a speaking drill without it being the traditional speaking drill. Now, with this, you can choose to have either a teacher focused activity with this, in that I say, okay, for example, Ivan, happy. And Ivan has to read it happy, or Yulia, sad. Or I could do the opposite and allow the learner themselves to read it and turn it into a game and be more learner-centered or student-focused, where Yulia is saying, there are 10 cakes in my basket. And then the class has to guess which emotion it was as well. There are many different ways that you can do this, but the result is the same. We're allowing learners to have fun whilst practicing the language. Comes the story, but also phonics as well. We know that the stories that are included in the course book are linked to the theme of the unit. And then after this, usually in the story itself, universal values are shared. And then you go on to do a bit of phonics at the end. Imagine you're doing this spread with your learners. What are some different go-to activities that you have? One really good thing, role play as well, absolutely. One really good thing to do with reading as well. Reading and listening tend to be the skills that students don't like to practice the most. Therefore, just like with the listening, make sure that we give the students purpose for their reading as well. So here, read and say the name of the super friend who eats pizza, apples, sausages, peas, a banana. What I would do is I would put this up and we would talk about the characters, talk about their names because they have the same names and the same characters are recurring in each story. Talk about who it is, and then what do you think that they will eat? And they have to go through and tick or cross. And then, of course, as they're reading it the first time, they're not doing exercise two, they're focusing on their answers. Who eats? Okay, did you get it right? Does she eat pizza or does he eat a banana? And then you go to the course book and very quickly go through it with them. You're giving the learners a chance to think about what they will read and predict what they will read. This prediction is a very good skill to build, especially for exams, for higher level exams like the B2 First or the C1 Advanced that they may take when, for example, when they finish high school. You're going ahead and doing prediction activities with them at a very young age. And once again, you're giving them the purpose that they need for reading. Drilling, as we have seen before with the emotions, happy, sad, worried, is a very good way that younger learners can do drilling activities. But another way that you can do this is, for example, here we're practicing this sentence. So 6 spiders stop for sandwiches on the stairs. The first one has to practice and they have to read it like a robot. So it would be something like 6 spiders stop for sandwiches on the stairs. Encourage them to have fun. Beep. If the robot has a beep and add it. And then the next student will have to read it like a tired cat would and ask them who would like to read it like a tired cat. And you'll have someone raise their hand and encourage them to act it out and play it up for everything that it's worth. The next one has to be a happy penguin. Get them up walking around the room, waddling like a penguin does as they're saying it. You're making it memorable. You're making it meaningful. You're balancing fun and learning. Remember that engagement itself is what drives learning and what encourages learning to happen. And the more that we do activities like this, where we're getting them to do drilling activities like a robot, the more learning happens in the classroom, the more memorable it becomes. And we're promoting the active use of language to achieve the language-rich classroom that we're looking for. The next page, of course, is on skills, and then we have, lastly, the Think and the CLIL projects. And just very quickly, one thing that I will mention specifically about the CLIL projects at the end of each unit is it is a great way, a great time for you to actively develop critical thinking skills. Now, remember, lower level critical thinking skills involves the intake of information and me processing it to make sense of it. So if we look here at this page, where do animals live? Think. Rabbits live in tall grass. So we have 4 different areas that animals live, and we're needing to think about it. Before then, we go to draw a camouflage and then show it to do a presentation to the class. So how can we do this? One excellent way that we can develop critical thinking skills in the classroom are through the use of things like this. What is this? It is called a spider diagram or a concept map. I like the word spider diagram because if you imagine a spider, you have the body and then you have the legs that go out. And that's just like this illustration does. And what it does is it allows you to categorize information in a very systematic way. Typically in the middle, as we know, the main topic, and then we brainstorm around it. So what I would do is I would split the class up into 4 groups or even into 8 groups. And I would give each group one of the locations, and with their classmates, with their group mates, they have to draw one of these and to write different animals that live there. Before then, we go through it and they have to make sentences. So, for example, parrots live in trees. Monkeys sleep in trees. Snakes crawl in trees. Things like this. But you can also go a step further with this type of diagram. This is called a Venn diagram. Basically, what this is I have this idea, and I'm looking at where they overlap, but how they're different as well. So here, if I have two groups brainstorming, one is brainstorming trees, another one is brainstorming trees. I have them to compare their lists, their diagrams. What animals do you have the same, and what animals do you have differently? And here you're allowing learners to communicate, to be more communicative by asking them to compare their ideas with their partners. If done in a very systematic way, this is achievable in a very low level classroom as well. Just make sure that you pre-teach any language that they need. So, for example, remind them, I have got a monkey. What have you got? Or have you got a monkey? Yes, I have, or no, I haven't, or yes, I do, no, I don't. Making sure that you pre-teach the language, but even very lower level students can do this. And in doing so, we're making sense of information that we've taken in, thus developing critical thinking skills. Now, the unit itself in the course book does go through as well to do other activities that are developing both creative and critical thinking skills. But let me encourage you, add mind maps, add categorization, add Venn diagrams, things like this periodically into the units to even further train the very critical and useful critical thinking skills. So, with that being said, we have gone through quite a lot in the session today. First of all, we looked at the theory of balancing the course book between the resources and the materials and the structure, but the needs of our learners. And it's the needs of our learners that dictate what we do in the course book and how we do it. And we've also looked at a typical spread from Superminds, and we've looked at some different ideas of activities that we could do to drive engagement, to make activities memorable, but also meaningful, to promote the active use of language, and to balance fun and learning. I want you to think of the things that we've spoken about in the session. What is one takeaway that you will have from this session? It could be something that you learned. It could be something that you knew but was reinforced, or even one of the activities that you would like to take and try in your class. What is one takeaway from this session today? Let me encourage you, try some of these activities. Try to think, though, how you could adapt it to best meet the needs of your learners. And do try some of them. And then after you try it, reflect on it. Reflect on how it went, on what you could do differently that would make it even more effective the next time. Um, Reflection is so important, and let me encourage you to continue reflecting on your lessons, making sure that we are making the most of the course book while still meeting the needs of our learners. So, with that being said, here are some resources. Now, you will get access to a PDF copy. I'll give you a QR code in just a moment that you can download a PDF copy of the presentation. All of these resources will be in the PDF copy. The first resource, Cambridge University Press and Assessment, has a website called Learning English. And here it allows you to pick from the options here, and it gives you ready-made activities that you can try in your classes. The QR code links to the website. A few books here, very, very useful books, including uh, the newly released book on AI and tips for teacher development as well. Really, really good research has gone into these books and some useful activities that it suggests. As always, the YouTube page that Cambridge has, and also the life competency activity cards for critical thinking, collaboration, skills like this. Have a look at these. These are a free set of activity cards that has ready-made activities for you to take and use in your classes. And lastly, if you would like to download a PDF copy of this presentation, this is the magical QR code. Scan it and it will allow you to download a copy of the presentation with all of the activities and the resources in it as well. I'll give you just a moment for that.
Преди всичко искам да благодаря на Чарлз. Определено мисля, че това беше много, много интересна сесия, като така наистина ни провокира да мислим, да намерим нови начини, по които да използваме съдържанието, което всъщност е едно от най-големите предизвикателства. Да планираме, да иновираме, така че да достигнем до учениците. Така че благодарим му за това. Okay, Charles, then thank you. It was lovely. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. And once again, thank you all for coming.
Okay, hopefully we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have a good evening, everyone.